Hello and welcome to Rise and Shine with Alissa. I am your hostess, the consultress, bringing you innovative and informative conversations from the front lines of entrepreneurship, investing, and parenting. Because in this wide world of disruption, nothing is going back to normal. Everything's up for review, and it is my mission to bring engaging conversations here to help you evolve your thinking, evolve your perspective, and leave this conversation better than you found it. So I have the pleasure and the privilege to have the one and only Dave Richter with me here today. Welcome to Rise and Shine.
Well, thank you, Alyssa. It's an honor to be here. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. We met once upon a time where you were up on stage, and I thought, man, this guy has such aligned values, not only in you personally and how you present very conversationally, but the values that you represent in your business and helping people stay on focus with how to behave appropriately with their money. Because I find that a lot of times people get into business and they're like, oh, yeah, the books are the books. As long as there's money in the accounts, we'll
Right.
be okay.
Yep.
You pushed the big do not pass go button on that and gave us a little bit of information and inspiration to take into our lives and our businesses. So tell us a little bit about Simple CFO and how you got into that discipline.
Yeah. I think for myself personally, when I read like Rich Dad Poor Dad and then some Dave Ramsey books early on, like in high school and then college, um, that helped shape how I thought about money. Those were some of the key books there. And because Dave Ramsey, I had never even heard basic financial principles before in my life. So that helped me just get a leg up of, okay, I actually understand a little bit more how money works now. And that was really like baby steps, because he's got that program. But then reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, it was like, huh, you mean I don't have to just work my whole life and I could be an entrepreneur or I could go out and buy real estate or do whatever? That was really my introduction to a different way of thinking. Then from there, it was taking a very non-traditional route because I went to college, but it was a private Christian college that the diploma really didn't matter at the end of the day. And I went to school for teaching. So that was a skill that was very helpful, though, because of what I do today. So I'm glad I did go. But then at the end of the day, I got investing in real estate and I started like buying it just from reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm like, I can't read this stuff and not do something with it. So bought my
High
first house,
five.
right? Yeah, it's like taking that massive action, even though I was scared to death, even though it was like right at the best time you could possibly buy. Like 2012, there was like foreclosures still on every corner on most markets in America and even in our backyard where we were in Northwest Indiana, right outside of Chicago. So that's how I got into real estate, started doing deals with a company that we scaled the residential side where we were doing like what you see on HGTV, like fixing and flipping houses and wholesaling them and buying and holding properties. We got to about 25 deals a month, but we were spending 26 worth of deals out the door. And it's like, you can make a lot of money and do a lot of deals, but still not have money at the end of the day. So that was just so eye opening to me as an entrepreneur. And as that at that time, I was just W-2 on the leadership team at that company and doing some of my own deals, on the side as well too, and buying some rentals for my own portfolio. That to me was the big eye opener of like you could do lots of deals, but it doesn't matter if you're not keeping it. But then I was going to other mastermind events too. Same thing, like when you get people like this, like you and I are having a one-on-one conversation, like especially if the recording is off too, like we'll open up a little bit more. Well, if you're at a mastermind, there's no recording happening, and if you get someone at dinner or something, they'll open up a lot more. And I heard story after story from people of, oh yeah, we've been through that. We've either done a lot of deals and not made a lot of money, or we're in there currently. Like as I was hearing
Yeah.
other people's stories. So that's what even got me and lit my fire to know that there's a huge need in the marketplace for something like what we're doing with Simple CFO. There's more to the story. I helped another investor and all that stuff, but I started Simple CFO honestly like because I wish I would have had something like Simple CFO in that first company. because that first company kind of blew apart and like all the people went their separate ways. And I started Simple CFO to give people clarity sooner of, are we really keeping the money we're making? Because I didn't want to end up in the same situation where it wasn't a great ending to the story for that company. So that's originally what started. And I've got more from there. And that's what led me into Profit First and all that. And like just getting a mentor in my life who pointed me to that book and then started to implement it. But that's why I started Simple CFO, because I didn't want people out there making money but not knowing where it's going.
Yeah, right. Like we are all in the grand pursuit of business. We're out here to solve problems and to earn an income for doing it.
Right.
So if it's only coming in your door to go out the door even faster, something's wrong. So
Right.
I always talk about, I love it's simple CFO because it gives you the impression that it doesn't have to be fucking complicated. It does not have to be, this giant complex, mechanism that you have to break your brain or be a rocket scientist to understand, even though I do see the rocket in your background. Well played.
Right. There you go.
Um, but that it can be simple. I grew up in a family business where, dad was the risk taker, the visionary, and the on site hard work. But mom was like the brains and the structure, making sure that the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. And the conversations that they would have is all about, are you sure you really want to do this? Because here's what I'm seeing from my perspective. And it was this dance back and forth, sometimes very animated dance, but
Right.
nonetheless, like it was always a conversation around, where's your head at, and what do the books tell you? Like what is the money saying to you? And I find there's so much opportunity in today's day and age for financial literacy around understanding what is the story that your money is telling you.
Yeah.
How do you see it? How do you read it properly? Because, I didn't go for my accounting degree because zeros and ones and debits and credits, like for some reason, it broke the circuit board up here. But give me an economics degree where there's 47,000 variables and I'm like, woohoo, let's go.
Yeah.
you know, so where do the situation that you find people in, again, we live in an evolving world, so stuff always kind of has to change and evolve to be able to keep pace with the problems and the new challenges that today's day and age provides. So in the last couple of years, I'm sure you've seen some innovations happen and some simplification that you've had to do on behalf of and for people. So how are you seeing the money game that you're helping people to win? How do you see it changing and improving?
First, I feel like at number one, it's giving people at least the fighting chance to know what game they're playing. A lot of people don't even understand they're playing the game of money as an entrepreneur. So that's where number one, we got to be on the same page that you got, like you said, where you got into this business, not to just have the expenses like they cut the money comes in and goes right back out the door. No one starts their business for that reason. And it's like that's where getting very clear, what are just the financial foundation? What's the steps that we need to take to build a good foundation for our company? That's where we always start. And that's where you asked me what the new innovations, sometimes it's going back to the fundamentals because people don't even have the fundamentals in place. So once we get there, then we can do what I call the fun stuff, which is the innovative type stuff. Like let's get Profit First in place, which is a system for your cash, and we can adapt that to the entrepreneur, to make sure that they have the cash for what they want and what their goals are. So I feel like that's one that's come on in the last, 5, 10 years when Mike Michalowicz originally wrote the Profit First book, and now it's being adapted to different industries. So that's been innovative because it's like, here's a cash flow system that an owner can understand and implement and actually receive a benefit, from where they can start to understand their money as well. So I feel like that's a big one. And even in that world, like there's banks that are more profit first friendly now in the tech space of where you could go online and open up the core principle of profit first. The tactical side, I should say, is the envelope method. Like you set up different bank accounts and name them. So you're naming every dollar that comes into your business. So it's like very intentional. And there's banks out there now that help you set up multiple accounts and name them, and they're very easy versus where some of the brick and mortar old time banks or big banks, it's a lot more difficult, to open up different bank accounts. So that's one big big thing. I would also say too that I think there's a growing understanding in the entrepreneurial world that you don't need to just staff your company with the front line or just the $20 an hour people. It's like we have to have a high level leader, but we might be too small to hire a full time leader, whether it's of marketing, sales, finance, operations. There's now a big growing wave of fractional leaders, which just means part time. And they're a fraction of the cost as well too of a full-time leader on the team, and that's why we stepped into this space, because I wanted to give access to the entrepreneur who couldn't have access to a high level financial leader, but could have access to them on a part time and a fraction of the cost type basis. So I think that's kind of been innovative over the last, I would say maybe the last decade, it's caught on, and probably within the last 2, 3, 4 years, it's taken off even more because now that our world is much more virtual, people are much more open to working with people, even if they're like part-time staff. Oh, they can be anywhere and wherever they are. So I feel like some of those are the ones, but it's like get to the fundamentals, make sure you understand those. If you don't have that, it doesn't matter all the other fancy stuff you have. Then from there, you can start to advance the fundamentals that you know, but you have to build on the good foundation of knowing you're playing the money game, how to set it up, how to play to win. And then from there, you're iterating for what works best for you.
Oh God, are you getting all this out there? Get your pens out, rewind, and go back if you have to. But the fundamentals, I love what you said about like it's a modern day envelope system because growing up, I saw money go in envelopes. Like
Yeah.
it has a physical place in my actual reality. I'm sitting here at my desk or standing here at my desk. I have a drawer right here with two envelopes because my kids are private money lenders in my business.
Hmm.
So I have envelopes that make sure before the end of the month that their interest payments are funded.
Yeah.
Because if it's in the envelope, it's not in the wallet where I'm going to go and pull and pay for other things. So translating that into bank accounts, when I first moved away from Long Island, where I've lived for 40 years, to Western PA, I had to figure out a whole new banking system. None of the same banks exist here. So I got me a credit union, I got a commercial bank, and I got a national bank so that I can, use all of the different tools. And so I learned very early from, mom crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and balancing the checkbooks that you have to earmark stuff. If you've heard any kind of talk in the financial space about earmarking assets, all that means is put it in a specific place so you don't touch it unless that event is ready. So earmarking your funds for a savings account and a checking account, that's the first step to putting the system in place. But what if you have like those crazies of us who are doing this type of envelope system, 3 banks, 10 accounts at each bank, all that have their own names, and you obviously minimum balances, etc. You have to know what works for you. But at the end of the day, I know I have one checkbook for the extracurricular stuff for the kids. I have one checkbook where all of my repeatable household finances are coming out of. I've got one checkbook for incidental business. I've got one for long-term growth and debt repayment and saving for, rainy day and taxes. They all have their own space so that when the bill comes in, I'm not looking at my balance going, oh, but I have bills I have to pay out of that balance. It kind of clears the deck mentally for you not to stress out about where your money's at. If you know where it is and you measure it on a regular basis, it gives you so much freedom because that discipline is in place.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my favorite authors puts it, you can't have financial freedom without financial discipline. Keith Cunningham. So you really have to have a system. And that's what all wealth is built on. Dan Kennedy says that all wealth is built on systems. And a lot of people when they get into business understand that for sales marketing, like you got to have leads coming in the door. You got to have sales and be able to move them from the marketing channel to sales and be able to actually get them in the door, and then from there it's the operations. But a lot of people don't have good financial systems. It's usually like, oh, let me, I think my spouse can do the books for me, and they have no financial background whatsoever. It's like it gets sticky and hairy like that. Or let me hire a virtual assistant that I know can do the books, but are they in your industry? It's like, do they know what's really going on? So we try and put band-aids on, and then we end up with a wound that's just bleeding profusely underneath that band-aid because we never took care of the root issue, which was we needed good systems, to be able to handle the finances. So that way we don't have to be thinking about the finances constantly. And that's what ends up happening is if you don't take care of it, you start to think about it all the time.
Yeah. It's like somebody said it takes up mental real estate when you're trying
Oh
to
yeah,
avoid
big time.
something. When
Yep.
you're avoiding your finances, you're actually obsessing over them. Isn't that
Right?
the weirdest thing?
Yeah, which was it's hilarious that you bring that up. Like today, I had a more straightforward conversation with someone on our team, and it's like, you know what? Us being able to resolve that was so much better than me just sitting on pins and needles and not having that conversation. Of like not just bringing it to the forefront, and where I forgot where I read this, but it's like, clarity is kind. Being clear on your expectations and what the accountability is kindness as a leader, a father, a entrepreneur. It doesn't matter. It's like whatever moniker you have, it's like being clear of where you are now and what you want from people and being able to have that conversation. Then you have those tough conversations sometimes, but then it's not taking up your mental real estate anymore. And you've at least said, this is my intention. And it's the same thing with money. It's the same thing with, like the relationship with people. You've also got a relationship with money. And a lot of us are sorely lacking in that area because we haven't been taught that relationship. Just like, you go out there on dates and you go out there and it's like, oh, shoot, is this the person? Is this? Oh, no, here's some red flags or whatever. We don't even know what red flags to look out for in the money area because we haven't never been taught. And it's like that's where we have to make sure that we have those good systems and we're very clear so that I love what you said, the mental real estate. So it's not just clogging up our brain because we're just scared or we don't know what to do. And there's ways out there to get yourself to be in a better position.
Yeah, and it starts with the mindset.
Yeah, big
Being
time.
having that clarity is knowing what you want, why you want it, and how to go about getting it. Usually is the thing you figure out as you're in motion.
Yeah.
So often we have this myth that we have to have it all figured out before we take a step, which is actually the reason why most people stay stuck. At the end of the day, we're all doing the best we can with what we've got right now. And I'm sure in 3 years from now, I'm going to look back at today and go, man, I wish I would have known whatever it is I don't know that I don't know right.
Right. Exactly.
And when we look back, so here's a tool I want to just share mindset wise because it relates to our upbringing with the school system. Is if you're in the fifth grade, anyone fourth grade and lower must be stupid, and anyone from the sixth grade and up must be genius because they're older than you or younger than you, and that's the mindset that we continue to have about our own evolution as we go. I am now 3 years past this teenage space and oh my god, yeesh, right? Cringe. I was so unaware back then, and then we shame and judge ourselves. I'm just going to call a little bit of BS because that inner critic can become your inner coach
Yeah.
to help you free yourself from that if you only use appreciation for that you've grown. So this way of thinking about judging where you've been because you were stupid at some point before that and judging where you're going to be because you're going to be so much smarter sometime in the future, both of these paradigms keep people stuck.
Yeah.
You're overwhelmed because you're not where you want to be yet, and you feel shame and judgment because at some point you hadn't been what you know now. Let all that stuff go, especially when it comes to money mindset. This is very insidious. It happens everywhere in our life, is that you can only do things that improve your situation from where you are right now. There's no such thing as before. It's now and next. So going at your money situation is the same thing as going at your way of living life. If you acknowledge and appreciate where you've been and where you've come from because it's created where you are today, yay. And if you create a vision that scares the bejesus out of you, that actually is not a red flag. That's a green flag that you're on the right path because that is the growth signal. That is the thing saying, this is beyond all your experiences so far. And that's what you have to journey into that frontier in order to create success and ongoing wins for yourself. So, you could break it down financially, you could break it down emotionally, but at the end of the day, this mindset piece that now applies to everywhere, don't judge yourself for the past. Bring it here and appreciate what you've learned from all of this and know that you have a lot more to learn and get excited about that. because that means you're growing and you're destined for more wealth, more abundance, more friendships, better quality of life, etc.
Big time. I resonate with that a lot.
Heck yeah, man. And this is like the entrepreneurial journey, right? Like, what are you doing anyway? We're here to talk because everybody knows business, if you're in business to make money. That's like the one given that threads us all together. But there's so many flavors of why people want to make money.
Yeah.
So when you drill down to, for example, simple CFO drills down to make it easy so you stop people from becoming overwhelmed and you make it more habitual and more clear as they go. So what kind of transformations are possible when you get your shit together?
It's usually people's behavior with money changes. Like they now understand that there's a different way of thinking about it. So that way they know, like, okay, if I'm going to make a big investment decision, whether it's like a new property or I need to hire someone or a new marketing, expense, they're thinking of it differently versus where before it was like, let's just throw stuff at the fan and see, at the wall and see if it sticks. It's
Not in
more
the
like,
fan. It'll blow
right?
back in your face.
Exactly. And that's where, but that's what most people are aiming for the wall and it hits the fan. And then that's where a lot of people shift their mindset from, okay, I need to stop doing that and be very intentional with the dollars and knowing what I'm doing with it and even if I am, throwing it at the wall, like how long will I do that until I see a return? Like, okay, was I able to in 90 days get the return that I was looking for, or do I need to cut this off? And it's just being more intentional. So I see that a lot. Another one is just confidence in themselves as a business owner. So if they get that, then they're like, I'm confident now that I not only can go out and make it the money, I can also keep it too. And I have the principles of knowing what to do with the money and the finances. And, if they're working with us too, it's like getting someone on the team that actually knows and can help me to crystal ball, the business and make sure that we're also seeing what do we not see now and what do we need to prepare for. So that's where a couple people or would say a lot of the people that we work with, but a couple especially where we've drilled in, like this is the two big things where they see the biggest turnaround. It's how they behave with money, number one. Number two, it's the confidence in themselves as business owners. And then I would say a big number three would be for anyone out there is if you start this system or if you start down the road of really getting a handle on the foundations of money and the foundations of just learning the principles and the fundamentals, you just gain confidence in all the different money areas. Like not just in business, but some people have taken what I teach with profit first and that type of thing, and they put it in their personal life. So it's like it affects the other areas of their life too. And that's a really big one across the board because then they can see how, okay, if I'm better with it over here, I know I could be better with my money over there too. And it just starts to seep into the other areas. So that's a really cool thing to see, when people start to grasp it and that they understand. They don't just understand at one level, they understand on like a deep level and how this affects them, wholly.
Yeah, and so for me, the catalyst of getting my mind right with my money, there was a point in time where I'm like, I know my finances, but I took a step into my own comfort zone and said, what if I measure it on a monthly basis? What if I'm actively measuring my net worth, my assets, my liabilities, my inflows and my outflows to see if I'm cash flow positive or if I'm net worth positive at the end of every single month? That I thought I was good with money before that. And I can tell you in the time since, I have watched my net worth grow over time. I have
Mm,
watched my decision making crystallize. I've watched my budget shrink because I now know where there's, distractions in my spending. And it gave me a lot more ownership and control over my decision making. So it allowed
yeah.
me to be a more confident person. And when I pay that forward and I, have an accountability group with my clients, here's what we're doing. We're measuring on a monthly basis. I had somebody come back to me and say, you know what? Monthly makes me really resist it every single month. I'm going to do this weekly.
Yeah.
And now they're firing on all cylinders,
That's awesome.
and it can change the game and how you show up outside of your business world, outside of your financial world, because now nothing bothers me. Three of my clients in 1 month were like, I'm in a financial crunch. I need to pay some stuff off. Can we work out a payment plan and stuff? And I was able to be more generous and forgiving and say, let's work it out. There was
Yeah.
no part of me that years before that I would have been like, oh my God, where am I going to find this revenue from? It's supposed to pay for X, Y, and Z. And not like, nope. Now I have all the confidence in the world that I can allow myself to be generous with my clients. I can be generous with my family and my community because it's coming from this place of confidence and overflow. And I get to be happier. It's a weird thing. Money doesn't buy happiness, but knowing your numbers for sure paves the track for you to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like how you said that it's the measurement. It's if you want to get better in anything, measure it. Like you were saying, if you're measuring your net worth, it's funny how you now know that if I make a decision upstream from my net worth, how does it affect what I'm going to look at the next time I look at my net worth? So it's like you're making the decision by tracking the end goal affects your decisions up that leads up to that end goal, which that's what measurement's all about. I'm using that MyFitnessPal, which is all about tracking like your macros and the calories and like the protein and all that. And it's like I never even thought about that stuff until someone showed me a few years ago. But it's so like, okay, I need to know I need to get this amount of protein, this amount of fat, and this amount of carbs in every day. And I can see and I'm tracking it. And me tracking it, as much as I hate tracking, that stuff, it holds me and myself accountable to know, am I on the right track or wrong track? And then you know what happens? I get to look in the mirror to see if I get the result. So it's like it's the same thing with your bank account. If you're going to want more money in that account, start to measure it and see what do I really want here? And if I'm going after a certain dollar amount, then that affects all the decisions leading up to that end result. So no, I loved how you put that. And it's like once you start to measure it, things start to change in your business and in your life.
Yeah. Hey, listen, so just a quick shout out to PNC Bank. They have student accounts, and my daughter turned 14 and she became eligible to open a student bank account. Do you know they open three accounts for her, just like they open for adults? They have a spend, a reserve, and a growth account. So,
Nice.
like, they're actually setting up the system by which she can measure and monitor. Her first spending spree out of the gate threw her into negative in the spend account, and the overflow from the reserve account kicked in. So she got to see real time what it's
Yeah.
like to have cash on hand and be spending on a card and not knowing what your balance is. She's training her brain to see her money in buckets. And
Yeah.
when she gets income, where does it go first? Your financial freedom account first, then spend, then other, right? So
Right.
making sure that you have a system. So do you have like a specific like rule of thumb? I think I remember, but I want to make sure to if someone is brand new to this system, something they can take away and say, okay, this is how I could structure how I'm distributing my income when it comes in.
Yeah. For us, when it comes to the foundation of business ownership and business owners, I like to separate it into three buckets at first: make, spend, and keep. What comes in, what goes out, what do I get to keep? So once you get income in, it goes into the income bucket, but then you separate it out to keep first because you want to make sure you're paying yourself first. So it's like, here's the number one thing you're making, you're coming to fruition, all those books out there that say pay yourself first. It's literally like it comes into the income account, you put it in keep, and then the rest goes to spend. Then obviously you can expand the system from there. If you read my book, I go into like more sub accounts underneath that framework and like how you can go there, and then where does reserves fit into all that, and all those different things where you can get it even more advanced. But you know me, even in the name, Simple CFO, I wanted to make it as simple as possible. Can you start with a simple three per, like even with PNC, they've got three accounts. It's like, can you start with your own system, three accounts for your business? Because most people don't know those numbers, what comes in, what goes out, and what they actually get to keep and take home with them. So it's like start there, transfer from income to the keep account, and then the rest goes into the spend.
Yeah, man. So, this has been so valuable and so fantastic. I feel like we're not done yet, and we'll probably have to come back and have sessions 2, 3, 4 into infinity.
Oh yeah.
But in the meantime, in the interest of the viewer, where can people go to find you and learn more about
Yeah.
your system and how to engage? Because I'm sure, like everyone's going to raise their hand right now, who can benefit from what they've learned here today, and how do you take action? Is you Information is useless unless it's being implemented. So
Right.
where can people go to find you?
If you go to simplecfo.com/gift, you can actually get a download of my book, Profit First for Real Estate Investing, if you want, to actually get action steps from this and like to deep dive into what I'm talking about, especially if you're out there and a business owner or even thinking about starting a business. Because if you start a system like this from day one, you could be way more profitable along the entire journey because you'll start with good money habits from day one. So there's just a plug that even if you're just getting started, this is a good system to start wherever you are on your journey. And then simplecfo.com is all the rest of the stuff if they just want to check out our site and just who we are and what we do and all of that. But that's how you can get the download is simplecfo.com/gift, or just go to the main site as well too.
Right on. Dave, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your wisdom and your passion for what you do. It is evident that you really geek out over this stuff. And
Oh
that's what
yeah.
we want, folks. When we hire professionals or we partner with people who can help us strengthen where we are not yet strong, this is what you want. You want someone who is totally nerdy for what it is that they're doing. And if you think that's okay, you're probably nerdy too. Anyway, nice plug for a shared resource we both really like to have fun with. But in the meantime, we are Rise and Shine every single Monday morning at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can find a brand new premiere broadcast. So make sure you click the like and subscribe. Share this episode with a friend because sharing is caring. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Dave, thanks a million. See you
Thank
soon.
you. Thank you very much.
Bye.